Barron Trump filed a lawsuit to silence Jasmine Crockett, thinking both the media and court were on his side. But in just 10 seconds, a former aide revealed a secret plan and flipped the whole case. It didn't come quietly, it hit like a punch. Barron Trump sues Jasmine Crockett for defamation. That headline flashed across every major platform. Within minutes, it was everywhere. Social media exploded. Cable news went into full-time coverage. Podcasts, blogs, experts, everyone started talking. The internet was full of theories, even before the official complaint was released. It wasn't just about the lawsuit, it was about who was suing and who was being sued. Barron Trump, Donald Trump's youngest son, now 19 years old, had stayed quiet for years. Suddenly, he was in the spotlight with a full federal case. And not for politics or business, but against Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, known for her sharp tongue and fearless voice. The claim that she knowingly told lies about him during a TV panel 3 weeks earlier. The timing was while Trump Sr. was busy campaigning. Crockett had just returned from a heated hearing. Emotions were already high. This lawsuit was like a match tossed into a pool of gas. Journalists got to work fast. The lawsuit, filed in San Diego's district court, quoted Crockett saying Barron had inherited the worst traits of his father and used his name to pull strings behind the scenes. That part, the claim of secret influence, was what Barron's legal team said had damaged his reputation badly. People picked sides quickly. Trump supporters said it was justice. Crockett's defenders called it an attempt to silence her. And Jasmine, she stayed calm. The morning after the case went public, she stepped out of her Fort Worth home with coffee in hand, hair tied back, and told reporters with a small laugh, "If they think this'll scare me, they've never seen me in a committee hearing." She looked straight into the camera and added, "They picked the wrong one." But behind the scenes, her team was shaken. This wasn't just noise, it meant depositions, discovery, cross-questioning, and public exposure. And that's exactly what the Trump family often used to their advantage. Her lead attorney, Marsha Tillman, famous for winning defamation cases, urged caution. "They don't want money," she said in the first strategy call. "They want your reputation. They want you dragged through court and humiliated on live TV." Jasmine simply replied, "Then, I'll make it worth watching." Still, the danger was real. Within 2 days, right-wing networks dug up old clips of Crockett from college, town halls, even secret recordings. Every mistake she'd made, real or fake, was now headline news. In the middle of the chaos, Jasmine sat with her father in his small house near Abilene. He looked at her and asked, "You sure about this, baby girl?" She stayed quiet, then asked, "Why does it always take a fight to get people to listen?" Her dad smiled softly, "Because the truth doesn't move unless you push it." But all that was before the court hearing began, before cameras packed the courthouse, before one witness changed everything. The real story hadn't even started yet, but the mood had already shifted. The video wasn't blurry, it was high quality, pulled from a live broadcast 3 weeks before the lawsuit. The topic of the panel: how political families shape public stories. For guests were there, but Jasmine stood out. She was direct, bold, and honest. Halfway into the talk, the host asked her, "Do you think the Trump kids, especially Barron, still influence politics, even without holding office?" Jasmine leaned in. No hesitation. "Absolutely. And it's not always clean. People think Barron is just a quiet kid. But he's not. He's working behind the scenes, pushing stories. And honestly, he's picked up the worst habits from his dad." The room paused, alert, not shocked. The host asked, "That's a big claim. Got examples?" Jasmine replied calmly, "Remember how the media suddenly went soft 2 days after I grilled a Trump-appointed judge in a hearing? 3 sources close to that PR push are tied to Barron's circle. If we act like he's not involved, we're fooling ourselves." That was the line the lawsuit was based on. The panel didn't fall apart. No one yelled. It was political TV, and fast. But in the weeks after, her comments spread like wildfire. Conservative influencers accused her of attacking a private citizen for fame. Jasmine didn't walk it back, she doubled down. 2 days later, she tweeted, "Power without accountability is dangerous. If Barron Trump is playing political games from behind the curtain, then yes, I'll call it out. Period." The lawsuit screenshot that tweet as more proof of harm. But people close to her knew this wasn't planned. It came from frustration. Months of seeing how the political narrative was being twisted by anonymous sources, especially after every time she took strong stances. Her chief of staff, Theo McMillan, had noticed. He once pulled her aside and said, Have you seen how, every time you speak on judicial bias, a story pops up the next day to make you look crazy? Jasmine nodded, like clockwork. Theo sighed. Feels like someone's driving this, and it's not random. That's when the suspicion grew. And the on-air comment, not a slip-up. It was the pressure breaking out. But most people missed the full picture. Clips got edited, reposted, twisted to look personal. Online, she was painted as bitter, jealous, reckless. None of it was true. But the damage spread. Later, in her Fort Worth office, she rewatched the full panel with her team. She paused the video and asked, "Did I lie?" Theo leaned back. "No, but you poked the nest." She sipped her tea. Maybe the nest needed poking. What she didn't know, someone inside the system had seen it all before and had proof. Not rumors, not guesses, but names, emails, memos, and a timeline that would later crack the case wide open. But before that storm came, the Trump team made the first big move. And it was loud. The lawsuit wasn't rushed. It was carefully built. Filed on a quiet Tuesday morning in federal court. It came with a statement from Barron Trump's lawyer, Theodore Langema, top attorney from Newport Beach, who defends the ultra-rich and protects their reputations. The statement said, "Ms. Crockett's words were false and aimed to damage Mr. Trump's image and safety. We will use every legal step to deal with this vicious behavior." And those words were picked very carefully. By the middle of the afternoon, conservative voices were repeating the same claims. Deliberate, harmful, careless indifference, again and again. Their message was fully synchronized. They claimed Barron had stayed away from politics, had taken the honorable path, and kept quiet. But this was a step too far. Inside their media headquarters in Los Angeles, a leased floor in a fancy high-rise near Century City, Barron's team had already mapped out the entire storyline. Video snippets were ready. Spokespeople had been coached. Social media personalities had been handed talking points disguised as personal opinions. Everything was designed to make Barron appear like the victim, unfairly attacked by a loud congresswoman chasing attention. As for Barron, he was mostly behind the scenes, but not completely absent. Insiders told journalists he was very involved, reviewing content, approving legal phrases, and asking for weekly updates. Still, when asked in public, his lawyer repeated the line, "Mr. Trump is committed to defending his privacy and honor." That same line was echoed in almost every appearance Langem made in the media. What many people didn't see was what was happening behind closed doors. Just 3 days after the lawsuit was filed, Barron sat at a sleek glass table inside a private room at the law firm, flipping through screenshots on a tablet. He looked at Langem and asked, "Why hasn't she responded yet?" "She's not afraid. She's delaying." Calmly, Langem answered, "Because she's smart. She won't reveal her move too early." Barron narrowed his eyes. "Well, she needs to understand. This isn't only about what she said. It's about respect. My name isn't going to be dragged through the mud by someone with a mic and a Twitter handle." Langem didn't reply. He understood the danger of taking on a sitting congresswoman, especially one with a national reach like Crockett. But he also knew Barron wasn't concerned with risk. What he cared about was control. What they hadn't counted on, or perhaps underestimated, was Crockett's refusal to back down. In the days that followed, she offered no apology, didn't walk back her statements, and didn't release a video to soften her message. Instead, she let the story build, letting the Trump side shape the media spin, while her own team quietly got to work. Crockett's lawyer, Marsha Tillman, had dealt with cases like this before. Rich claimant, weak accusations, media chaos, and again, she'd seen one thing. Lawsuits like these often came with buried secrets. Stay quiet long enough, and someone always talks. She told Jasmine in a private call, "This isn't just about defamation. This feels like a warning." Jasmine replied, "Then let's send a warning back." That's when Marsha made her move, and flipped the whole case. She reached out to a former communications aide, someone who had worked under both Trump and Biden. This person had inside info. He had seen how public narratives were crafted and spread. He'd recently been quietly removed from a big PR firm with ties to Trump donors. His name wasn't public yet, but his message was. He told Marsha, "I've got documents, and I've got a reason to speak." No one knew then that the statement would bring everything crashing down. But before that moment hit, the court would get its first glimpse into just how calculated this fight had been. The first meeting between Jasmine's legal team wasn't held in a law office or a government building. It took place in a small rented room in downtown El Paso. Quiet, far from DC, away from cameras and chatter. The table was scattered with files, laptops, and 3 used coffee cups. By noon, Jasmine leaned back, arms folded, letting everyone else speak first. Marsha clicked through a plain PowerPoint. Just bullet points, legal precedents, key quotes. But heavy stuff. They're trying to paint you as impulsive and unstable, Marsha said. But they're filing. It's weak, it's vague. That means they're depending on perception, not facts. Across the table, Theo looked through a printed thread of social media posts. Check this out, he said. These replies are showing up within minutes of each other. Most of them are using the exact same phrase. Reckless attack from a desperate congresswoman. Jasmine read it quietly, then set the paper down. So there's a pattern, she said. Now we just need to prove it was intentional. That's when Marsha looked up and said something that shifted the entire mood. We might already have that. Phones went silent. Doors were locked. She opened her laptop and showed them the notes from her call with the anonymous former aide. He had reached out through a mutual contact in the media world. Claimed he had files, emails, memos all linked to a deliberate narrative campaign. Launched just days before the lawsuit. Not guesses, not speculation. Internal records. Jasmine was hesitant. Why would he help us? Marsha shrugged. He said he left on bad terms. Said things got too dirty. And he doesn't like how quickly they turn the media into a weapon. Theo added, sounds like guilt. Jasmine nodded. Or someone trying to wash their hands before worse things come out. Either way, they agreed to hear him out. A Zoom call was arranged. No recordings. No screenshots. No revealing info. The man's voice was calm. Older. Clear. He didn't ramble. He didn't make it about himself. He simply laid it all out. There was a file named Strategic Public Retaliation. It had Crockett's name, suggested media outlets, suggested talking points, and even a list of headlines they wanted to go viral. It wasn't just Barron's idea, but he had signed off on it. That was confirmed by a dated memo. Theo leaned forward, voice sharp. Are you saying Barron Trump approved a plan to publicly smear a sitting congresswoman and then sued her for responding? The man didn't blink. Yes, and I'll testify. But only if I'm legally protected. It was a lot. Jasmine sat still for a full minute, then turned to Marsha and said, if he's telling the truth, this isn't just a lawsuit anymore. It's coordinated media manipulation. And I'm not staying silent. They made their move. Marsha filed a motion the next day asking the court to allow a surprise witness for the defense, with a protected identity until the hearing. That motion shook everything. Not just because of what it hinted at, but because of who might be connected. Reporters speculated. Trump allies got nervous. And the judge, a strict appointee known for moving quickly, approved the request within 24 hours. Through all of this, Jasmine stayed calm in public. She kept showing up to hearings, spoke at 2 town halls, never mentioned the lawsuit directly. But behind the scenes, she was preparing for battle. She met Theo in a parking garage the night before the first hearing. You sure about this? He asked. She nodded. If they wanted silence, they chose the wrong woman. They thought they'd own the courtroom. But they were about to learn. It belonged to her. San Diego's federal courthouse didn't look like the heart of a national scandal, just another glass and stone building. But that morning, the sidewalks were jammed. Press, photographers, protesters, and fans on both sides. Barron wasn't there. His team said he was watching from a private spot. Jasmine was. She walked in at 8 a.m., wearing a charcoal gray suit, no jewelry, her face expressionless. Cameras flashed. Microphones reached. Someone called her name. She didn't stop, didn't wave, just walked straight inside, head held high. Inside, the air was thick with tension. Reporters lined the back. On Barron's side, Langham sat with 3 attorneys, tablets and folders ready, clearly in it for the long haul. On Jasmine's side, Marsha sat beside her, calm, quiet, with a junior lawyer and Theo. He wasn't official legal staff, but he was there to help Jasmine stay centered. Judge Bernice Kaplan entered at 9:06 on the dot. A former prosecutor, known for being just but swift, scanned the courtroom with the sharp eyes of someone used to managing individuals who thought they were above her control. Her face stayed neutral, no smile. The proceedings kicked off with introductory remarks. Langham led. His voice was calm, almost comforting. Your Honor, the plaintiff, Mr. Trump, files this lawsuit not out of political motive, but as a citizen safeguarding his reputation. He claimed that Congresswoman Crockett had wrongly accused Mr. Trump of hidden influence and manipulation without proof and fully understanding the damage her claims would bring. He cited Crockett's national TV statements and follow-up tweets, portraying them as reckless, repeated, and actively shared by her office. Every sentence crafted her image as threatening, erratic, and uncontrollable. Then it was Marsha's turn. She wrote no script, no papers. "This case doesn't center on reputation," she said. "It's about control." My client answered truthfully, relying on credible facts and observable conduct. "This suit is meant to suppress opposition and penalize free expression." She told the court they would prove the plaintiff had tried to tarnish Crockett's name and quietly launched a smear campaign long before this legal action. At that final point, Judge Kaplan arched a brow, but remained silent. Next came the witnesses. The Trump side began with a tech expert who argued Jasmine's remarks sparked a measurable rise in threats online. He showed data graphs, charts, heat maps. During cross, Marsha went in sharply. "Can you directly link those threats to her followers?" "No." "Did she encourage any of those threats?" "Also no." "So you're saying she spoke, and the internet behaved like it usually does?" The expert paused. "In a way, yes. It wasn't a win, but it wasn't defeat either." Trump's team then called a behavioral specialist, who suggested Jasmine's delivery was inflammatory, emotionally charged, and meant to provoke. The moment felt awkward, more like a TED Talk than professional testimony. Even the judge seemed irritated. Marsha objected twice. One was upheld. Meanwhile, Jasmine stayed composed, scribbling notes. She wasn't the center of the trial yet, but the tension grew every time her name came up or one of her tweets was projected. All eyes turned her way. Near the day's end, Judge Kaplan called a short break. The lawyers separated. Theo's phone buzzed. He checked it, passed it to Marsha. She glanced, blinked once, and leaned toward Jasmine. "He's in, he'll testify." Jasmine didn't respond. She only took a long, slow breath. The surprise witness had agreed. He'd arrived the next day bringing everything with him. The courtroom wasn't prepared, but Jasmine was by 8 a.m. The room hummed with the usual sounds of a new day. Rumors had broken late the night before. Jasmine's team had added a secret witness. No one knew who. Speculation ran wild. Some guessed a former aide. Others thought a media insider. No one predicted who actually showed up. When Judge Kaplan entered, she was clearly aware of the buzz, but didn't waste time. "Defense may proceed," she said, short, sharp. Marsha stood. "Your Honor, we call Mr. Garrett Wynn." A brief hush. Chairs moved. Heads turned. Garrett Wynn, an unfamiliar name to most but in Washington's media and strategy world. He was recognized. A former advisor, involved with both Trump and Biden, specializing in media work. Known for keeping a low profile, rarely interviewed, never loud. He wore a navy suit, thin-framed glasses, and moved like a man used to being behind the scenes. He took the stand, was sworn in, hands folded in his lap. Marsha opened gently. "Mr. Wynn, what was your most recent position?" "Until February, I worked as senior media consultant at Parkbridge Strategies. Before that, I served as director of special communications projects under both the Trump and Biden administrations." Langham immediately objected. "Relevance." Judge Kaplan didn't flinch. "Overruled, proceed." Marsha nodded. "During your time at Parkbridge, did you become aware of a media campaign targeting Congresswoman Crockett?" Wynn didn't blink. "Yes." The air tightened. Marsha paced. "Was Mr. Barron Trump involved in that effort?" "Yes." The gallery stirred. Reporters raised heads. Cameras zoomed in. "How involved?" Wynn leaned in. "He approved a memo, titled Strategic Public Retaliation." It included specific messaging, preferred media outlets, and a list of targets, Congresswoman Crockett among them. Langham stood. "Objection. The term retaliation is prejudicial." Kaplan raised a hand. "He's quoting directly." "Overruled." Wynn continued, now steady. "The memo detailed phrases to use about Ms. Crockett, terms like unhinged, obsessed, and disgraced. It outlined release timing, tweet coordination, and influencer involvement." Mr. Trump signed off on the final version. Marsha waited, then asked, "How long before this lawsuit was that memo approved?" Wynn didn't pause. 3 weeks. Just 9 seconds. That's how long it took to flip the entire case. What was once painted as a response now looked like a media trap designed by Trump's team before Crockett had even spoken on the panel. Langham tried to rattle Wynne during cross-examination. Are you politically motivated? No. Paid? Not a cent. Then why testify? Wynne finally looked at him. Because there's a line and I saw them cross it. The courtroom froze. Judge Kaplan announced a lunch break. No one moved. Those 9 seconds weighed down the room and reporters, aides, and everyone who'd soon read the headlines. Jasmine sat still, facing forward. Then she turned to Marcia and whispered, "They came thinking I'd lose." Marcia smiled. Turns out, they built this case on their own error. The media hadn't even typed their reports yet, but the damage was done. After lunch, the courtroom stayed quiet, but it wasn't peace. It was tension. Even the bailiff seemed unsure, like something had shifted beneath the floorboards. When Kaplan returned, she adjusted her glasses. Let me be clear. Mr. Wynne's testimony is significant. Both parties proceed with caution. Marcia stood with only a folder. No papers needed. Wynne had broken the case wide open. Your Honor, she began. We submit the internal memo, Mr. Wynne mentioned. Dated February 9th. It's signed by Barron Trump and includes 3 pages of targeted strategy against Congresswoman Crockett. Metadata confirms 2 members of Trump's team accessed and altered it within 48 hours of her TV remarks. Langham didn't object because there was nothing left to contest. Marcia passed the document to the clerk. Judge Kaplan read it. Her face didn't change. She turned pages slowly. On the last one, she looked up. Is the plaintiff aware this document exists? Langham's student answered carefully. Your Honor, we're currently checking the document's legitimacy, and we reserve the right to give a complete response once our forensic experts have sufficient time to examine it thoroughly. But it didn't make a difference. The court wasn't waiting because what happened next wasn't about legal arguments. It was all about public opinion. And that doesn't work on courtroom schedules. By the end of the day's hearing, the memo was already leaked. Whether the source was someone from the audience, a staff member, or a strategist trying to recover the narrative, it made no difference. It had already hit the internet. Screenshots took over Twitter, Reddit users broke down each section, and news anchors were reading it out loud on primetime shows. The phrase, strategic public retaliation, started trending within half an hour. One analyst said, this is Watergate with better lighting. Another quipped, they tried to silence a congresswoman and, instead, they gave her the mic. In the parking garage of the courthouse, Jasmine was sitting in the back of a black SUV with tinted glass. Theo got in next to her and handed her his phone. She started scrolling. Her name was everywhere. Support messages were flooding in. Old friends reappeared. Even critics of her politics started showing support, not because they agreed with her, because they recognized the moment. Someone with power had tried to destroy her and got exposed in public. Jasmine looked out the window and said, I didn't want this to be about me. I wanted people to see the game, the behind-the-scenes playbook, how they shift stories around like chess moves. Theo leaned forward and said, they're seeing it now. Meanwhile, inside the Trump team, phones weren't being answered, statements were being delayed. A staffer reportedly quit immediately. Langham canceled 2 interviews and released a vague press statement, blaming it on political targeting. But no one bought it, because in just 9 seconds, 9 clear, proven seconds, the video testimony had revealed everything. This lawsuit wasn't for protection, it was a move for revenge to control the story. And it completely backfired. By the following morning, media presence had doubled outside the courthouse. Protesters and supporters returned. But this time, the signs were different. Posters read, truth isn't defamation, power fears accountability. Crockett was right. Jasmine walked in just like before, calm, steady. But now, she wasn't walking into the flames. She was walking through them, still standing strong. The trial wasn't finished, but in the court of public opinion, the verdict was done. When court resumed the next day, the entire energy had changed. It wasn't tense anymore. It was defensive. Langham's legal team looked more like PR repairmen than actual lawyers. Their confidence was gone. They moved slower. They whispered more. They kept checking their phones, and Barron Trump, still missing. People started noticing. No public statements, no videos, no photos. Rumors swirled. 2 advisors were reportedly fired. He flew back to Florida. Some said he had a fight with his dad. Nothing was confirmed, and the silence only made it worse. Judge Kaplan began the session with a reminder. The trial is still ongoing, and there will be no more theatrics. But by now, the damage had already broken past the courtroom walls. Marcia stood up again, met and calm. Your Honor, considering yesterday's testimony, We ask the court to dismiss this case, citing malicious prosecution. We also request an official inquiry into the use of court systems as a political weapon. Langham didn't even get up. He just leaned toward the mic and said, "We disagree with that framing, and will respond once we fully review the evidence." It was a delay, a weak one, and everyone in that courtroom felt it. Their case had gone from confident attack to clinging by technicalities. Reporters had already published headlines. Before lunch, Trump's lawsuit against Crockett collapses, memo confirms Barron approved. Smear campaign, Crockett turns defense into national movement. Outside, it was chaos. People who had never followed a court case were now glued to live streams. Students, retirees, office workers on break. They were watching, discussing, quoting. The memo had been downloaded, shared, and analyzed, even annotated by journalists and political fans alike. At a bar in Sacramento, two men in their 40s watched coverage on a TV. "You see this?" one asked. They tried to punish her for saying what everyone was thinking. His friend nodded. "Yeah, and she came back with proof." Even right-leaning media started stepping back. Some changed tone. One headline asked, "Did Barron get bad legal advice?" No one was coming to clean up this mess, not convincingly. Jasmine. She didn't brag, she got back to work. Held a community meeting in Lubbock 2 days later. Didn't bring up the case, unless someone asked. And when they did, she always said, this wasn't about winning. It was about truth and standing firm. But her silence didn't stop others. 6 members of Congress signed a joint letter, condemning lawsuits as silencing tools against elected officials. Civil rights lawyers praised the trial as a wake-up call, a reminder that legal action isn't a replacement for accountability. College campuses discussed Crockett in political science classes, a real-world case on how defamation law can be twisted, and how even one surprise witness can shift the whole balance. As for Garrett Wynn, he disappeared after testifying. No interviews, no press. But people didn't forget. His name trended for 2 days. Some called him a hero, others questioned him. But no one denied what he did. A journalist summed it up. He walked in quiet, walked out historic. In Washington, political circles took notice. They didn't say it out loud, but everyone could feel the change. Jasmine Crockett had become more than a rising star. She was now a force no one could ignore. And as the legal dust began to settle, the personal toll started to show. The public drama may have ended, but behind closed doors, the real consequences had just begun. Barron Trump quietly returned to Palm Beach. No reporters followed. No cameras at the gate. His plane landed late afternoon. And according to one local journalist, it wasn't staffers waiting. It was his mother. Back at Mar-a-Lago, the team was told not to talk about the trial. Some were reassigned. Some let go. Barron wasn't giving interviews, and inside he wasn't saying much at all. 2 days later, he sat across from his father outside, on a patio with gold chairs and ashtrays. The tension was thick, not loud. "You should have kept quiet," Donald muttered, lighting a cigar. Barron just stared at the lawn. "You gave her the spotlight," his father continued. "You had the advantage. You gave it away." Barron replied in a flat voice, "I just wanted her to stop talking." Donald raised an eyebrow. "That's not how the game works. If you go after a politician, you better be sure they've got nothing to fire back." Silence. It wasn't just loss, it was loss of control. For a family that had ruled the media for decades, this time it felt different. It felt personal. And for Jasmine, the aftermath wasn't about politics. It was emotional. One night she sat in the back of her father's old pickup, the truck bed lined with blankets and folding chairs. The West Texas sky stretched above them, silent except for the chirping of crickets and the soft sound of tires humming far away. He passed her a soda can and asked, "How are you holding up?" She took a long drink, then shrugged. "I don't feel like I won. Just feel worn out." He nodded. "That's what truth does. It doesn't scream. It just sits heavy." Jasmine let those words settle. "I just wanted people to see what they do behind closed doors. How they use money and power to punish anyone who speaks out." Her father looked at her. "Now they know, because you didn't give in." And that part was true. She hadn't backed down, but it had taken a toll. Friends kept calling. Old co-workers reached out, and a news network even offered her a special segment. She said no to everything. After weeks of noise, she finally wanted peace. Theo, on the other hand, stayed busy. He was building a full digital library of the case. Every document, every news headline, every quote from that memo. He didn't say what for, but it could become educational content. or something bigger. At one meeting, he leaned in and asked, "What if this isn't the end? What if this was just the opening shot for something else?" She exhaled. "Then we'll be ready, just like we were this time." But deep inside, behind her steady voice, was a deeper sadness, not for herself, but for the world around her. "People shouldn't have to be brave just to tell the truth," she said one day. "But that's what it costs now." Theo nodded, and for a moment, neither said a word. In quiet moments, Jasmine thought of Garrett Wynne. What finally pushed him to speak? What did he risk to say it? She never got to thank him. Their lawyers kept them apart to avoid any claims of working together, but she hoped he knew. His 9-second testimony had done more than shake a courtroom. It had pulled back the curtain. Now people could see the system behind the polished smiles and polished PR, the silent machine that ruins reputations under the disguise of respectability. But even after things calmed down, one more part of the story was still waiting. This wasn't just about Jasmine or Barron anymore. It had grown into a larger question for the whole country. When power strikes without truth, who do we stand with? 2 weeks after the judge dropped the lawsuit, Jasmine Crockett stood in a school gym in Las Cruces, New Mexico. She faced a group of teenagers who had invited her, not as a politician or a headline, but as someone who had gone through a battle and come out on the other side. Leaning on the podium edge, "No notes, no speech," she said. "You don't have to be perfect to stand your ground. You just need to remember why you're standing at all." The students didn't speak, but they were paying attention. No phones, no whispering, just wide eyes and still hands. One boy raised his hand. "Were you scared?" She paused, then answered honestly, "Yes, but not for me. I was scared of what it means when rich, powerful people think they can define truth by suing someone." That gym wasn't the capital. It wasn't cable news. But it mattered, because this story had moved past the courtroom. It had entered homes, schools, barbershops, and group chats, and it stayed there. The court of law had ruled in her favor, but the court of public opinion had gone further. It turned the case into a lesson and a mirror. It showed how easy it is to punish speech if people aren't ready for the consequences. In the following weeks, 3 more public figures stepped forward. Not with lawsuits, but with stories of silent pressure, media tactics, and networks of whispers funded by powerful wallets. Garrett Wynne's name came up again, this time in an article he wrote for The Atlantic, titled "Truth Costs More Than Silence." He didn't mention the trial directly. He wrote about fear, about the system, and why he finally stepped away from it. The memo he had spoken about was now public, saved, studied. Some law schools even added the Crockett v. Trump case too. Their classes on political lawfare, where lawsuits are used not to win, but to wear someone down. As for Barron, he slowly stepped out of the spotlight. No interviews, no cameras. His team released a short message saying they were choosing to focus on positive work instead. But people remembered, not because of who he was, but because of what he tried and how it failed. Back in Jasmine's office, life moved on. Bills to read, hearings to prepare for, people to serve. But something had changed. Voters who once stood in the back now came up to shake her hand. A mother in Amarillo sent a handwritten note. "Thank you for standing when most of us feel too small to speak." Jasmine kept that note in her bag, not because it made her proud, but because it reminded her why it mattered. One night, Theo walked into her office while she was still working. He dropped a folder on her desk. She looked up. "What's this?" "Your next talk. Georgetown wants you to guest lecture next month." She raised her eyebrow. "Me? Teach?" He smiled. "Seems they finally realized you have something to say." She smiled back, tired but full. "Let's hope they're ready to hear it." And that's the truth. It wasn't just about winning one legal fight. It was about what follows, what people learn, what they carry forward. This case revealed something deeper. Truth doesn't always speak louder than money. But if even one person protects it, even for a moment, it can last long enough to be heard. So next time someone powerful tries to silence a voice by dragging it to court, maybe they'll think twice. Not because they're scared, but because that old strategy isn't working the same anymore. People are watching now, and maybe that's the shift. If you still believe truth matters, even when it's messy, even when it's hard, subscribe. This won't be the last story. Like it, but if you're listening, it won't be forgotten either.